So, what's a workflow? Well, in your organization, a workflow is a process. It goes from one activity to the next until it's complete. So, in this example, perhaps we have a phone call with a customer. And then after we take the phone call, someone fills out an order form. That order form is then sent to a supervisor who determines whether a group of people need to do some work on it or whether it can simply be filed and then acknowledged. So in this particular workflow, there are two different branches. One branch that requires some human work and another branch that doesn't. But this workflow could just as easily be a vacation request. I'm applying for some time off. So I fill out a form and I give it to my supervisor. My supervisor can approve it, pass it along to HR, and then I get an email back that says, have a great vacation. Or perhaps my supervisor has to have someone else, their manager, sign off on it before it's sent to HR, and then I receive permission to go on vacation or not. This type of a workflow is common in any organization that's not very small, and normally workflows have artifacts that go with them. A form that gets filled out, an envelope where more things are added as it goes along, and it's passed from one hand to the next. We often think we're in pretty good shape if what we've done is managed to replace a paper form with something that's emailed. But still, if the people in this process have to keep track of what it is they're doing with an item and where it goes next, this process can get bogged down at any point along the way. In SharePoint 2007, we were able to create this simple type of a workflow. This kind of workflow assumes that we go forward step by step by step. There's no way that we can have a workflow that doesn't start at one point and end at another point. And there's really no way that we can easily pass something off to someone else that they then have to take a series of actions with. In SharePoint 2010, we added a more complex type of a workflow. Here's a workflow that says we're going to create a presentation for the annual meeting. And in this case, we have someone designing the presentation, someone else reviewing it, but then based on exactly who's going to deliver the presentation, this presentation might be reviewed by upper management or by someone in accounting or by someone in HR. And whoever reviews it, then it's sent off to IT, where it's published on the server to be available as a web page for the annual meeting. This more complex workflow that has other branches based on conditions, who's delivering the presentation, was a type of workflow that we could create beginning in SharePoint 2010. We also have the ability now in SharePoint 2013 to have a workflow that actually returns to a prior step, because one of the new features of SharePoint 2013 workflows is the ability to have stages as well as steps, groups of steps put together, and the ability to have a workflow that can return to a prior step, which neither of these workflows in SharePoint 2010 were capable of doing. There are three types of workflows in SharePoint. The first is the type of workflow that we will simply attach to a list, including a document library. So let's imagine here that rather than filling out a form when you're making your vacation request, you go to a SharePoint document library, fill out a template that's waiting there, click Submit, and the library in SharePoint actually knows to let your supervisor know it's time to review this request. And based on your supervisor's decision, SharePoint then knows whether it should route the document to their manager or send it directly to HR. So this type of workflow, a list workflow, can be attached to a form library, can be attached to a list, can be attached to a document library. Every single SharePoint list and library is ready to take on workflows. So you will see the workflow command as part of the ribbon in lists and in libraries. The second type of workflow is called a reusable workflow. And you can create reusable workflows using Visio Studio or SharePoint Designer. And a reusable workflow is exactly what it seems like it would be. A workflow that does something basic that we want to do in many places in the enterprise. So it could be an approval workflow. A document's placed in a library, someone needs to approve it before it can be broadly distributed. Or a simple acknowledgement that a document was actually received, or that a form was submitted. Those types of workflows get used over and over again, so you create and save them as reusable workflows. The third type of workflow is a site workflow. And if you haven't worked with workflows in a while, you might wonder, What's that? Because it was a new type in the previous version of SharePoint. A site workflow is a workflow that doesn't even need a list or a library. It's a workflow that is assigned directly to the site. Regardless of the type of workflow that fits in your situation, using SharePoint to automate workflows is just an amazing relief on almost any organization, because many of the workflows we're discussing are workflows that are supporting functions for the business. If you've ever started a workday by calling to find out who has the form that you're trying to complete, or where we are with an employee onboarding process, or exactly who has the document to approve a new vendor, you'll appreciate the ability to open up a SharePoint list or library and see when a form was submitted and who's working on it right now, and know that it's being managed by an automated workflow set up in SharePoint.